We're told Tudor life was all about luxury, but for Queen Anne Boleyn, a simple bathroom break was a dangerous mission. Between heavy gowns held together by hundreds of sharp pins and a total lack of plumbing, royal toilets were anything but comfortable. Today, we're opening a door history books usually leave shut to expose the disgusting secrets of the Tudors' most private habits. To be the most famous trendsetter in England, Anne had to pay a hidden, painful price. While her French style looked fresh and youthful compared to the rigid dresses of the English court, the reality was a nightmare. From the outside, Anne looked like a Greek goddess, but inside she was literally trapped in a cage of velvet and silk. Getting dressed each morning was a 2-hour struggle that required at least 3 attendants. Anne could not just put on her gowns. She had to be built into them, one painful layer at a time. But the real horror came afterward. Once dressed, she was essentially imprisoned until bedtime. Those elaborate gowns could not be removed without help, and certainly not quickly. So when nature called, which it did just as urgently for queens as for anyone else, Anne faced a genuine crisis. People usually picture Tudor toilets as one single, disgusting joke, a simple bucket for everyone. But that's a lie. In reality, everything depended on wealth and location. Surprisingly, the situation in the countryside was far better than in cities. Most people simply used a hole in the ground or a privy built over a running stream. There was no toilet paper, so people used straw or moss. Nature took care of the rest, but inside the cramped stone walls of London there was no nature to help. If you were a peasant, your bathroom was a wooden bucket. And once that bucket was full, many people did something absolutely unthinkable by modern standards. It was not only disgusting, it was a death sentence. It was exactly why plagues and other sicknesses wiped out entire neighborhoods. For peasants, waste often went straight out the window and into the street below. The smell was so terrible that city authorities repeatedly passed laws against it. But while the poor were weaponizing their windows, the nobles were busy turning the bathroom into a high-stakes political meeting. Privacy in Tudor toilets was often minimal, but it depended on the context. For example, Hampton Court was a palace with a dirty secret. Hundreds of courtiers lived there. Many bedrooms didn't have private garderobes, which in Tudor language meant toilets. The solution was inspired by the Romans, and for us today, it's hard to understand. What they did wasn't unusual or shocking in Roman culture. They didn't view bodily privacy the way modern cultures do. Our ideas about strict bathroom privacy developed much later in European history. Most Roman public latrines had rows of seats side by side, usually with no walls or dividers between users. People really did sit next to each other while using them. Toilets could even be casual social spaces where people chatted with friends or discussed business. In large royal residences in 16th century England, nobles sometimes used similar shared toilet blocks. You might think they had copied the genius of the Romans. However, the Tudor version of these toilets was actually far more problematic. Roman toilets usually had more advanced structures than Tudor ones, even when they looked similar on the surface. They often had running water flowing underneath to carry waste away, and it was regularly washed out. Tudor England did not have Roman-level city plumbing systems. Even impressive palaces used simpler methods. Toilets tended to smell worse and be less hygienic, mainly because the systems functioned as basic waste removal rather than integrated plumbing. For Tudor queens, using the toilet was not a lonely experience either, but for very different reasons. While elite Roman women didn't have many problems using the toilet, someone like Anne required help because of her elaborate and restrictive dresses. And who was chosen for the honor of accompanying the queen to the bathroom mattered far more than people realize. As queen, Anne used something luxurious when she needed to use the toilet. It wasn't exclusive to royalty, because nobles usually owned at least one. However, not many people could afford it. It was called a close stool, a wooden chair or box with a hinged lid. Inside was a ceramic or metal chamber pot. At Henry VIII's court, helping the monarch with toilet matters could be seen as an honorable job. It showed that a person was highly trusted. In Anne's case, her ladies-in-waiting had very close access to her and could gain influence simply by being near her during such intimate moments. However, Tudor gowns made this job difficult. The ladies had to lift and manage many heavy layers of fabric, making sure nothing touched the pot or the floor. It was not considered normal to stare at or observe the act, and servants likely looked away or turned aside. When Anne was finished, what followed would fall well below modern sanitary standards. It increased the risk of contamination and infection. There was more odor and bacterial growth, as well as a higher chance of parasites or skin irritation. Anne was fortunate to have frequent laundering and servants who kept everything in order. An attendant stayed nearby to give her cloths and provide water for washing her hands. The materials Anne used for wiping were washable and reused many times. But this was not the end of the story. What happened to royal waste afterward is a completely different and often disturbing matter. Tudor doctors pushed every limit when it came to what they did with Queen's waste. Anne's main political role was to produce a male heir for Henry VIII, so her health and fertility were watched very closely. Tudor doctors believed they could detect pregnancy or illness from urine, but by modern scientific standards, their methods were mostly guesswork. One specific method was jaw-dropping. In Tudor England, medicine was still largely based on ancient authorities like Galen and Hippocrates. This was not uniquely English. It was common across medieval and Renaissance Europe, and even in other continents. One of the main diagnostic tools was examining a patient's urine in a glass flask. Physicians evaluated its color, clarity, and smell. But they had one more observational technique that was not used often, yet was shocking to say the least. Different medical texts gave slightly different descriptions, but common ideas included that changes in saltiness or bitterness were thought to signal changes in the body. We do not have to explain how they checked it, as there is only one reliable way to do it. In some cases, it really happened. It was known as uroscopy, and taste was a small part of a wider diagnostic ritual. The horror did not end there. Tudor royals themselves also tasted something, but in a way that they were not aware of. In 16th century England, a gong farmer was a worker paid to empty cesspits and carry away the solid waste, commonly called night soil. They typically worked at night, partly because of the smell and public complaints. Although the job could be comparatively well paid since few people were willing to do it, gong farmers were heavily stigmatized. Cleaning large installations was genuinely dangerous. Workers faced the risk of drowning, suffocation, and exposure to foul air in confined spaces. Historical records describe fatal accidents, highlighting the serious hazards of the occupation. What happened to the waste after collection was part of a shocking cycle. While some of it was dumped into rivers or outside town, many people also saw this as a real business opportunity with significant profits. Night soil contained nitrogen and other nutrients that were highly prized before the development of chemical fertilizers. Farmers and people growing vegetables for city markets wanted anything that improved yields, especially near large towns. As a result, night soil created a practical urban-rural cycle. Waste from the city was used to fertilize fields, which produced food that was then transported back to urban markets, sometimes even appearing on royal tables. This form of recycling was common worldwide before modern sewage treatment. To contemporaries, it was not strange but efficient and entirely normal. However, the system carried significant risks. Without knowledge of germs or parasites, people could not fully understand the dangers involved. When night soil was used carelessly, particularly in its fresh or untreated state, it could spread disease, contaminate water supplies, and transmit parasites. Despite these dangers, the agricultural benefits were clear, and its use continued. You might think it could not get worse, but things did. Because sanitation systems were simple and poorly understood, Using the toilet in Tudor times exposed people to real risks that you should be grateful you do not have to deal with. The first flushing toilet was invented for Anne's daughter, Queen Elizabeth I, by Sir John Harrington, but even this did not solve its problems. Tudor toilets were not just uncomfortable or smelly, they could actually be dangerous. People did not understand germs, so they focused on masking smells rather than removing the source of infection. Waste often collected in cesspits, ran through open drains, or ended up in streets and rivers. This created ideal conditions for bacteria and parasites to spread. Major health risks included outbreaks of diseases linked to filthy conditions and food contamination from flies carrying bacteria. Because waste areas were rarely sealed, toilet areas attracted rats, flies, and other insects. If you think that is all Anne and other Tudors had to deal with when it came to hygiene, you are completely wrong. The toilet was only a small part compared to other hygiene habits that were normal at that time. Check the previous video to learn more.